Now, my understanding is that you spent some time in New Zealand.
Did, yeah. My teenage years, yeah.
Tell me about that, if you want to.
Oh well, what do you want to know? What do you want to know about it?
Well, let's see. So, when would that have been approximately?
Oh, like year 9, so like 13, 14 years old, I think, something like that.
Okay.
And yeah, and it was just a big move, just a big. So it was my mum, my brother, and I. Mum decided, she didn't want to live in England anymore. So, and we had family out in New Zealand. So my auntie and uncle lived out there already. So we kind of had somewhere to go, which is how we ended up going to a place as insignificant but beautiful as Dannevirke in the middle of nowhere.
Right. Yes. I think I know where it is.
Yeah. It's a great little town. It's like about an hour north of Palmerston, I think.
Right. Yes.
Yeah.
It must be a weird place for a teenager to find himself.
It was kind of dreamlike. It wasn't, I was super looking forward to it. I was one of those kids that liked being able to adopt a new persona, you kind of move on and, all right, I can be someone new now. So moving to New Zealand was really exciting. And then, yeah, it was a massive culture shock, obviously, completely different culture and a beautiful, stunning place. I kind of wish I hadn't been there as a teenager because, like, a lot of teenagers, you're sort of quite unappreciative of aesthetics of things, so I missed out on all of that. So I'm planning to come back at some point, but
a wise move.
Yeah.
Did you catch any of the music scene while you were here?
In bits. Funnily enough, it's probably what drove me to want to move away from New Zealand at that time, because when I was about 17 or 18. So I wasn't there for that long. It was just like those teenage years. But the minute I was able to leave school and leave home, I just had my sights set on England because I was trying to pursue drama and music and theatre, and where we lived in a sort of farming community.
Yeah, it's not really happening.
This was pre-Lord of the Rings as well. So you guys didn't have, maybe up until that point, the big movie was like topless women talk about their lives or something like that, something a bit more indie. And then obviously I moved back to England and the Lord of the Rings happened. I was like, maybe I could have stayed and got involved. But no, it was a good move because the first thing that happened when I moved back was I met my wife. So
there you go.
It was a good move.
That's a plus. So you're in Cornwall, and so have you been there pretty much ever since you moved back?
Yeah, pretty much. Like on and off stints in London, but not big ones, just for on and off. Like I had a flat in London for a while when I was a solo artist. Right. That must be like 10 years ago now. But no, essentially for the last 20 years, I've been in Cornwall, in Newquay.
Right. So you've got a new album out. It's called Maverick Thinker. And I think it was just out a couple of days ago. So, this past Friday, right?
I'm lost. I don't know what day it is, what time it is, anything. Yeah, I know we have an album out. Yeah, Friday sounds good.
Friday sounds good. That's usually where they come out. Yeah. So is it a fog for you, or is it kind of strange putting it out now? How is it working for you?
Yeah, of course it is. But we were so geared up for everything last year. We started the year with our two biggest tours to date around Europe, and then in March we were in Los Angeles recording the album, and we were kind of had the whole year lined up. So yeah, it was a bummer to get it cut off, but I don't know, listening to it, like getting the test presses through and stuff, I'm still super proud of it. It still holds up. So it's just really looking forward to being able to play it live. That's where it's obviously where it comes to life. But then it's like creatively, it's kind of strange being in this place because as the writer of the songs, you sort of, every time you put an album out or when you finish recording an album, you're sort of ready to move on because you've learned from your experience and you're like, okay, I want to apply what I've learned into the next bunch. So it's been weird kind of having to dip backwards and forwards because in my head, my
moved on
timeline, I'm way ahead. So I keep having to pull myself back and remember, no, with like 2020 didn't happen. We're just rewinding the clocks a minute.
Exactly. Start again. Well, I think a lot of people are going through the same thing, especially musicians, but kind of everybody is. It's like, what happened? Where are we? What day is it? What year is it?
That's why you can't whinge. I just can't justify having a whinge about it.
Well, you can whinge. It's just that everybody else will have the same whinge.
yeah, that's true.
Yeah, well, what the heck? And you mentioned being in LA. So you recorded this album at Sound City Studios, which is pretty cool.
Cool.
How did that come about?
Just through some people I knew at the label. My publisher had a friend that was running, because it's not a commercial studio. It's being run by a couple of guys who like to, I mean, everybody knows who they are, so it doesn't really matter if I did say their names, but I know they like to keep it kind of under wraps.
Right.
And just through that, really, and meeting Joseph Lorge, the guy who produced our record with us. He's an engineer at Sound City and knows the place inside out. So it was kind of getting into discussions with him and chatting about ideas we had for the songs, because I'd already demoed everything, or we'd already demoed everything. So just listening to them and thinking about the sounds we could make and the things we could do with it. It just felt really natural and felt really comfortable. And once you get over the awe, once you walk through the doors and go, holy shit, all of these records have been made here, you got no choice but to sort of pretend that you're supposed to be there in some sense, because you're there to make a record. You can't be quivering with nerves every time you try and sing. So the aura and stuff kind of went away, and then we just settled right in. It's such a comfortable space to work in, and everything works and everything's beautifully maintained, and there's all this cool quirky gear, and the workflow is just very smooth because Joseph knows the place inside out. So it was an awesome experience. Yeah.
Oh, that's cool. You get the feeling like the ghost of Tom Petty and everybody else should be hanging around there.
Yeah, it crops up. You sort of forget about it because you're in the zone, and then you break for lunch and you sit in the foyer surrounded by all these gold discs, and you go, oh yeah.
No pressure.
There's Rage Against the Machine. Yeah, there's Fleetwood Mac, and it's like, oh, okay.
Yeah, that's pretty. And we should point out that William the Conqueror is a band rather than a solo thing. So tell them, you have Naomi and Harry are the other two members of the band. Yeah. Tell us a little bit about them, if you will.
Yeah, sure. Well, so firstly, William is more than that. Even it's a band, and it's sometimes me, and it's sometimes a book as well. It's like a fictional thing. So it's a bunch of different things. But anyway, back to your question about the band. Yeah, the band side of William the Conqueror, is Harry Harding on drums, who is like my little brother. We met on the music scene, I don't know, probably 10 years ago or something. And he started playing for me when I was a solo artist and joined me for made my last record with me. And through him, I met Naomi, who, again, another local musician. And I was sort of fiddling around with this idea of starting a project where I could remove my name from everything.
Right.
And so I was going out under the radar as William the Conqueror, just to experiment with things and just to try things out that I couldn't do in my solo career.
Yeah.
So we just started forming around that, and it just worked. And the plan was never to, we never said, right, let's make sure that by our third album we were recording in Sound City. We had no goal as such, other than to just make sure we keep enjoying doing what we're doing, and remember that music is at its best when it's not your job, when you're creating it because it's something that you feel like you need to do. So that was the ethos, and that's kind of how it started. And
what brought the three of you together? Was it a common musical vision, or you guys just friends and hanging out?
No,
or what?
they're like enablers to silly ideas I have.
Right.
I trust them an awful lot as it. So I could, because in the early days I wasn't like a big successful singer-songwriter, but I had a career. It was like my living.
Yeah.
So when I started talking about jacking it in and calling myself William the Conqueror, there wasn't very many people that sort of got it.
Yeah.
A lot of people thought I was being silly.
Especially if you consider Googling.
Yeah, precisely. It all seemed so ridiculous. but there was just something about, I don't know, I must have spent enough time with Harry and Nay driving around doing gigs under my own name.
Right.
Telling them about this idea that they sort of started to see what I was talking about and see that it kind of made sense in some weird way. It wasn't some ridiculous idea. So just a trust thing. So just building off that trust and kind of growing with that, and writing as a three-piece or for a three-piece, so that how what Harry's capable of and what Naomi's capable of and what I'm capable of. It's trying to work off our strengths rather than sort of define a sound and think, right, we're going to be a rock thing with a dub bass. It's like Naomi plays from her background, I play from mine, and Harry plays from his, and there's this kind of weird you know, like the Doors, they were all from like jazz and blues and classical.
Yep.
So it's a kind of merging together of three different musical backgrounds, but something about it just worked. So we carried on, you know.
Carry on indeed. And well, the album opens with a song called Move On, and there's a video that's kind of got some footage of Death Valley, and it's got a kind of home movies and stuff in it. So what were the choices there? As far what were you trying to get across with that?
Was that you, openly glum, the world passing by as you hold out your thumb like a good kid, caught up to no good, the sun like the hammer on top of the hood, not home when you needed it most, laid out for a while in a town by the coast where the gulls and the dreams live off the bread and fate draws in circles around in your head. Move on, move on.
Number one, no budget for a music video, so then so because the album is all about memories and the whole William the Project Conqueror,
right?
William the Conqueror project has been about memories. With all our music videos, that just seemed like the sensible place to go, was to find found footage and piece things together from things that shouldn't match. And so that was what that was. The Move On was more like you say, a sort of home movies kind of thing. But we've done like old horror movies and televangelist stuff, and it's a fun thing that's kept us going in lockdown because we can't be a band. We can think of dumb things to do with videos instead.
Well, you do have a lyric that says "Stay focused for a twist in the road," which is kind of words to live by these days for most people.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Yeah.
And then there's also a video for the Deep End, where
with the 80s dancers,
yes, with the 80s dancers.
You can dive in at the deep end. You can look the other way. It don't hurt to be reminded. It can only be yourself that lets you down.
Took me by surprise a little bit. Didn't?
It's a good one, man. It's good. That's Shay, friend Shay at the label who edited that one. It's great. Very funny. We just couldn't believe how in time with the song they all were. It was amazing.
Right. Yeah. It looked like it was made for it.
Yeah, totally. That was a piece of fortune finding all of that footage. Definitely. Yeah.
And what can you tell me about the song itself?
The Deep End. The Deep End is like harking back to quite a specific memory I have of the first time I ever tried to sign to a record. Like, I don't know what you'd call it, like whatever it is that the idea you have of becoming successful as a kid is like the moment you sign a record deal or whatever.
Right.
So one of my first encounters with that world, and just realizing that world wasn't at all what I thought it was growing up. It's a very serious kind of business as opposed to this rock and roll glittery strange thing that you think it is when you're a kid. So the song's just about that, really, just about being naive enough to dive into the record industry without knowing what you're doing, which is what I did, and ended up signing to a major without a clue about who I was or what I was doing. So it's just a reflection on that stuff, I guess. Yeah.
Gotcha. And then the following song, Alive at Last, there's some fine guitar playing on that. I assume that's you.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, that one.
It's kind of got this stonesy, bluesy kind of slower vibe.
Like a 70s vibe. Yeah. Someone else said that the other day. That's cool. Yeah.
Whatever I said about keeping my head, I retracted. Gonna have to breathe and lose my face. Chalking up a new fate, clearly on a clean slate. Alive at last, alive at last, alive at last.
Yeah, that's a song about friendship, which again, too personal a story to sort of elaborate on, but just the idea that friendships or any kind of relationship have pits and falls, and it's about coming out the other side, I suppose, of a time when you haven't been seeing eye to eye with somebody that you love, maybe something like that. I don't know. I don't always know what the songs are about when.
Well, yeah.
And it's also been a long time since I played them, so forgive me.
Right. Do the songs change what they're about to you as you kind of first you write it, then you present it to the band, then you record it, then you play it in front of people?
Oh yeah, they change all the time. Yeah, like sometimes you won't know what it's about until months down the line. But I think that's quite common, isn't it? I remember hearing Eddie Vedder talking about the song. What's the first song of their first album? Alive.
Which one?
Alive.
Yeah.
And he was saying that when he wrote it, it was a curse. The idea that he was alive because he'd had all this trouble in his teenage years, or he'd found out that his dad wasn't the person he thought he was, or some shit went on.
Yeah.
And that angsty curse of feeling, God damn it, I'm alive. But then going through a cathartic experience of singing that song to 70,000 people at a festival, all of a sudden he said the meaning changed. It's like, actually, no, I'm grateful to be alive. It's the opposite. Yeah. So yeah, I look forward to when songs change and evolve. You never sort of root them down and say that is what this is about. It's you've got to be open to things evolving.
Sure. Yeah, very good. One song I wanted to touch on was Fiction. It's got some nice twangy vibe to it going on there. And there's a line in there, I need a melody and I need it now. It's kind of a desperate songwriting plea.
You're not allowed. But me, well, I need a melody and I need it now. Wait for the stallion. Bald for the door, a sucker for love as you fall to the floor.
Yeah, that's when you're in a creative hole. You can't get out. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. That was a late one. It was only like a couple. I don't think we've ever played that one live. I think I wrote it right towards the end of. Just before we went into the studio. So yeah, that was one of the first times we ever played it, was when we recorded it. Yeah.
And the title track is Maverick Thinker, which is the final song on the album. I think it's the longest song on the album as well. So what brought you to that point where that seems to be kind of the focus of what you're trying to say here?
Call my mother and tell her I love her. She says I don't sing like I used to do. Some cards from the kids and some unread books of mine. A vague hope that the message gets through.
Well, it follows on from our first two albums. So this is Maverick Thinker is the third in a trilogy of albums. The first one was centered around the sort of perspective of a child, and then the middle one was around the perspective of a father figure, and the third one was always meant to be a mother figure, so hence Maverick Thinker.
Right.
Which is a sort of ode to my mum, and that song is obviously a love letter to my mum. It's through a kind of motherly lens, I suppose. All of the fictitious William stuff that I came up with is through a different lens.
There's some cool kind of countryish piano playing on that track as well.
Oh, dude, yeah, that's savage. That's a guy called Evan. So that was the only thing we didn't get to record when we were in the studio because of lockdown. We got kicked out of LA.
Right.
And the only things we hadn't done were the electric guitar and the piano on Maverick Thinker. So
right.
But Joseph, had this buddy of his who came in and put that piano down. It's like way better than any of us could have ever done. So it's perfect.
You can't do everything.
No, definitely not.
And is that a slide guitar solo in the middle of it?
Yeah, then that's Joseph. That's the producer, Joseph. Because again, we didn't get a chance to do it when we were there. That's the only thing we ran out of time for. But he sent that through. It wasn't meant to be a guitar solo. It was meant to be an accordion solo or a harmonica or something else.
Right.
And we hadn't quite figured out what to do. And then one day Joseph just sent that through. It was perfect.
You're not going to argue with that, are you?
That's all, man. That's one of my favorite moments on the record.
Yeah. So I assume you haven't had a chance to play live much these days and get these songs out in front of people. Is that a frustrating thing for you?
Yeah, of course. Yeah. We're sort of fortunate in that we did have a chance to tour a lot of the songs in the build up to making the record, you know,
right.
We always like to make sure we take them on the road before we record them. So we have played a lot of them live, but yeah, you know, like when you record an album, that's the sort of moment you nail it. And then, you know, the songs are going to change and evolve as you go forwards again. And that's the bit you look forward to, is like, because you always think you've reached your peak when you record. Things always change, so it's been very frustrating not being able to have that catharsis of, you know, everything that we work towards, being able to kind of realize it and see it through has been.
So were you able to do much to celebrate the release of the album on Friday?
No, not particularly. No, I'm not really one for celebrating things. I'm not very good at celebrating. I don't know why. It's just wired into me. I think it's the disappointment of the next day or something like that.
Right.
This thing, do you know what I mean? Like if you get the excitement of getting dressed up for a fancy dress party, that's where it's good, is when you're getting dressed. But then you get pissed and you have to walk home through the streets with it not quite working, and it's like the illusion's gone. So
it's the is that all there is moment.
Yeah, something like that. It's a defense mechanism, but it's really exciting for it to be out. But also my wife works for the NHS, and she did a night shift, so I spent the day just trying to keep the kids quiet and picking the cats out and stuff. So it wasn't no fanfare.
Gotcha. Well, one last thing I would just touch on. I mean, from what I understand, you were born in Scotland. You kind of spent some time here in New Zealand. Now you're back in England, but the album, your music that you're making is very American sounding, for lack of a better term. So how does that happen? Have you thought about that?
I think it's just must be what I assumed music was if you made it. I don't know. Do you know what I mean? Like, because I grew up on that music. It's what my dad played, Dylan and Neil Young and all the old stuff. Yeah, that's what I thought music was. So that's just what I started doing. And ever since I was like 11 or 12 and started writing songs, that was just always what I tried to do. It wasn't until later in life I realized I wasn't actually a very good musician and couldn't do anything else if I wanted to anyway. So it's like, it's fine. I stick with the guitar, bass, drums. I'm happy with that. I'm good with that.
Very cool. So have you been back to New Zealand at all since you moved away?
No, not yet.
Really?
Not yet. No, not yet.
We have a pretty good music scene here, I must say.
Yeah. I remember, I really got very fond memories of recording. There was a studio in Palmerston called The Stomach, and I made my first ever demos there. And absolutely. I played in bands. We had the Manawatu Rock Fest, like a sort of battle of the bands thing. And man, no, it was a really cool place. I think I was in such a rush to get out of there, and then when I landed here, I had a family and I've had a career, and I just haven't had the time or the space.
And now, of course, everything's locked down anyway. You guys,
precisely.
It's impossible to move around.
It seemed like New Zealand was one of the places that you wanted to be, though. You guys.
Oh yeah. I mean, if you had to choose a place, this is not a bad choice. There are certainly worse.
Exactly. Yes.
So were you in the States much when lockdown was happening, or did you just bail out?
No. It crept up on us. There was whispers of this COVID thing as we went. Yeah. But then we arrived and we were in a bubble. So we went from Airbnb to studio every day, with the occasional trip to the supermarket for some supplies. And every time we went to the supermarket, the shelves were a little bit emptier and the queues were a little bit longer. But so it was kind of weird because you didn't really know what was going on. And then, next thing you know, the call comes in, says that we have to get out. We can't stay. So it was all a really bizarre dream. And then on the last day, we went down to Venice Beach and wandered around taking photographs with my friend that had come over from Australia, who was also being sent home. And it was very Cormac McCarthy-ish. There was nothing around, and it was very odd.
Band on the run.
Yeah.
I mean, what? I'm just curious. When you say you were sent home, did you guys get official notification from some place that you had to get out of there?
From the studio, from the guys that run the studio and own the studio, because everything had to shut down. Right. There was sort of no choice really. It was we couldn't have stayed in. Our Airbnb would have closed. Everything would have closed. So it was like now or never. Yeah. We had 3 days left of recording that we didn't get to fulfill, but we'd done everything pretty much, like I say, apart from the piano and the guitar.
Piano and the guitar.
So it was okay. It wasn't so bad for that, but we were looking forward to those last 3 days, just mucking around in the studio.
Yeah, I'll bet.
Trying stuff out. Yeah, there's unfinished business with Sound City. I hope to go back.
Yeah, well, I'm sure you'll get a chance to. They're gonna sort this thing out. Somebody will somewhere along the line.
Some superhero. Yeah, that's
exactly.
The problem with this generation is we think a superhero is going to come and save us. Yeah.
Oh boy. Well, thank you very much for taking time to talk to me. I really appreciate it. All right. Have a good day.
Thank you very much, Tim. Nice to meet you. Bye-bye.
You too. Bye-bye.